I'm Jaclyn Johnson.
And I'm Marina Middleton.
And this is WorkParty, a podcast that's part work and part party. WorkParty celebrates a new generation of women who are redefining the meaning of work on their own terms and having fun while doing it.
In this podcast, we are diving into all the areas of being a working woman: mind, body, and business. No topic is off limit.
Real talk and hot takes. Think of us as your internet work wives. This is WorkParty,
the podcast.
Wait, where's the champagne?
KK Hart is a dynamic leader, passionate about empowering others, from executives to everyday people, to achieve incredible things. With a background in business strategy, acquisitions, and wellness, she has built and advised multi-million-dollar brands including MindBody, ClassPass, Lilly, and Pure Barre. Now as CEO, Chief Empowerment Officer of Ghost Democracy, she's redefining clean beauty with high performance, exceptionally cleaner products loved by Oprah, Rachel Zoe, and so many more. A mom of two through adoption, KK's holistic approach to business and self-care fuels her mission to help others invest in themselves. Mind, body, and beyond. Welcome, KK.
I'm so excited to be here.
We are so excited to have you.
So you went from, which I love this story because I talk about it, being a fan of Ghost Democracy to actually running it as a CEO. So that's not exactly a normal path. So what was the moment where you were like, okay, I have to do this?
You know, it was a bit of a love affair, and that's not very typical, even for me. I've acquired many businesses, but this one was different. I felt like stepping up as a client meant I could share my voice, but I was also an advisor. So I went from client to advisor and advisor to owner. And what really got me was that the products were amazing. They were like meticulously formulated. There was just such an ethos around transparency with the brands. But where they missed the mark was really my Spidey skill, which was to authentically get the message out there and then stay small and independent versus going big. So that was really anti-cultural, 5 years ago when this business came out. And now it's our secret Spidey skill that's helping us to grow.
I love that. Well, you mentioned you acquired businesses in the past. You acquired 9 different businesses. Can you talk about what that's like, what that strategy was, and what you learned from it?
Yeah, I think when people think about business in general, and especially acquisition, they think that you see trends and you capitalize on them and that you can never have a shortfall or a difficult moment. And actually, I think the secret sauce to this is seeing weaknesses and turning them into strengths, using that as your competitive edge. So as an example, Ghost Democracy was ridiculously formulated, but the value proposition didn't always weigh out. The price to create the products didn't always match what they promoted them for. And what we realized was, while that minimalism in the products and the fact that they do 3 things, 4 things, and they were formulated to be about 2 to 4 times more potent, but also 2 to 4 times more cost effective, meant that the value proposition was great, but it had been like a best kept secret.
Right.
So oftentimes you're looking at a business and you're looking for the boom moment. And while they had that with this cult following that they've created, what was interesting to me was that was viewed as a negative by, private equity, outside capital. And what I really believed was, to be radically authentic, we needed to stay independent and we needed to double down on that ethos. So that was that kind of differentiator that I knew the business had that most businesses don't have. I mean, I'm an acquirer. So I probably look at hundreds of business a year. I rarely acquire more than once a year.
Wow.
But when I see that, I see the opportunity to take something that's so niche and so special and so profitable, then we can make it go boom and feel really good about it at the end of the day.
I love it. Obviously, taking big risks is in your DNA, and I feel like that scares a lot of people. What, in 100 businesses that you're reviewing a year is insane. What is it that gets you to say, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to take a risk at this, and not thinking about all the worst case scenarios?
Yeah, I think you're going to get this more than most. I don't think it was in my DNA.
Yeah.
I'm a multiracial immigrant from a tiny country. I don't know that I was meant to do this until I started doing this. And oftentimes, you get it.
Yeah, love.
Oftentimes, what I noticed is I was kind of passed up for the thing I wanted. And so I started with this concept of investing in myself because it was the only path I saw to success. It's like working in corporate, building big businesses on their backs and mine. It didn't feel authentic anymore. It didn't feel equitable. But when I put myself out there and I started buying businesses, I realized I had direction. I could double down on myself. And no matter what happens, it's always good. Mind, body, business, or self-care, you always find something great out of it.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not that great business owners are found, but they're created. And that really was a moment for me to realize, I could be upset that I didn't get the promotion. I could be mad that the opportunity didn't come up, or I could create my own opportunities every step of the way. And I think I'll be happier for it as well.
Yeah, I love that. And we talk a lot about that with Create and Cultivate, of just like, if you can't find the room, you create the room. If you can't find the table, you create the table. You know what I mean? And it's just like, I love that you shared that, because it's so important, especially for anyone that's listening that feels like they really can't find their own place, or they're like nervous to take a risk because people aren't betting on them. It's like, no, you just have to bet on yourself. You know, that's the first step. And then it kind of works from there.
Yeah, it's not always popular, right? I always think there's an ethos in my heart that hasn't really made it to the mainstream until now, conscious consumerism. And so recently there was a No Buy Friday. And I was like, yeah, that's cute, but that's not going to actually change the world. If we're consciously thinking about how we spend, how we save, how we invest, we would be slow buying every day. But that's not very popular.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't win me votes.
Yeah. Truly.
But it does make you think, very much so holistically about your investment, whether it's yourself or your business or your self-care for that matter.
And getting on that trend too of like the slow consumer, all these things, clean, non-toxic, dermatology approved, like all those things have become so trendy.
Yeah.
How do you break through the noise in the beauty industry when like it feels like every product now is clean and you don't really know? You actually don't know what you're getting.
You're going to think this is crazy, but the answer is to not sell them another bottle.
Yeah.
And so it's so anti-cultural. One of the reasons I decided to stay independent is because I knew that no outside investor would understand the vision of like investing holistically into the client. We doubled down on R&D. We decided not to have any SKU that did less than 3 things. And we really spent a lot of money on education. What makes that different is that it does not sell every bottle to everyone, but instead allows people to kind of look inside holistically and say, what are the aspects of my needs, of my stuck points that I'm not addressing that isn't in a bottle? It cannot be bottled. It cannot be fabricated, but it can help their results holistically. And that will inherently allow us to get more clients. We have an 80% rebuy rate, which is about double industry average.
That's crazy. That's amazing. Yeah. And I think that's like a stat that maybe people overlook, but it actually, from a long-term investment or acquisition standpoint, retention is one of like the strongest stats that you can have.
100%. When I consult businesses, they often come to me for one thing I do, low-cost digital ads. It's my Spidey skill. I've been doing it since before Meta really blew up. And they'll say, I just need more clients. And then we'll look at the back end of the business, we'll look at the KPIs, and I'm like, you just need to grow with the clients you have and retain them more. We need to look at every aspect of your conversion, not let a leaky funnel continue to be leaky by throwing money at it with more and more and better. I think that's the really beautiful aspect of doing things the way we're doing things, is it's aligned with my personal ethos. And so I can feel really good about it at the end of the day, even on the hard days, which there are.
Yeah, of course.
It always turns into a success when you feel like that.
So I love that you are an expert in digital ads, because I think that's such a not controversial space, but an always changing space that businesses are struggling with. I mean, the iOS update like freaked everyone out.
Yes,
it went from like free money, like everyone's like buying your stuff, to like nobody's buying your stuff. Looking at your marketing strategy for Ghost Democracy, what does that pie chart look like in terms of influencers, events, sampling, like all that?
I feel like I'm just the anti-girl today.
Yeah. You're like, none of it.
Well, so the first thing I said when I acquired this business is like, oh my gosh, we're going to have to go into Sephora and Ulta. And no shade to Sephora and Ulta, but actually, mark my words, we will never go into that retail because it really goes against everything we believe in. So the first thing I realized is, well, we have this amazing cult following, but they're kind of you'll have to pry it out of my cold dead hands following. So they don't love to share about it. It's their best kept secret. We've had some great celebrity endorsements that have come out recently, but many of the years it was like, no, just don't tell people that I use this. I don't want the price to go up. I don't want people to be into it. And that's really odd, right? So I've had to really think, where would I want this to be if I was thinking about it for the long term? And every time I looked at partnership. So when you're in retail, what you forget is basically those companies are like silent business partners for you, right? Good, bad, or otherwise. And so I thought, who do I want to elevate? What voices do I want to continue to put out there? Because so much of my career felt like blinders. I put my head down, I go to work, great things happen, I squirrel all away, I do it again. Put my head down, make the money, put it all away, invest it, do it again. And with this one, it felt like, I want to do this with others. I want to link arms with other business owners, other companies that had a similar ethos, similar target client. It's always better for you. And that we really think about how can we do life and business better together? So that was my vision. My background with fitness, beauty, health, and wellness means I'm always working with businesses in that space. So we can say, well, I would rather give that extra profit to the fitness studio around the corner, to the chain of 10 salons, to the franchise that's a dance studio. And so where I feel really good about this is that we're able to partner with businesses that feel authentic and yet still have our target client, which means acquisition goes down. Yay for the marketer and me. But it feels like we're doing something. Yeah. We're talking about more than just skin. I really believe that so much more than just skincare is about self-care. It's about that moment you take for yourself, whether it's a great stage of life or a difficult stage of life. I've had them both. And self-care is really what got me to where I am today. Investing in myself in that way just leads to business success. It leads to professional success. So why not grow with the people you actually want to be in business with?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so amazing listening to you because you're very clear on what your values are and what your morals are and kind of like how you want to grow with that. A lot of founders and executives really do struggle with like sticking to their values because they're really focused on revenue. How do you have you had times where you're wavering in your values and because there's so much profitability that you could make in otherwise, and kind of how did you choose that direction or which direction you ended up going in?
Yeah, what was easy about this was seeing it from a client's perspective because I was my own target client. And so I knew if we were going to do this, we were going to do it right. And so in a time where most people are diluting their products, selling out, or honestly slashing prices, for me, I thought, that's actually our Spidey skill. That is our skill set that no one has. These products are phenomenal. What can we do to double down on that? Well, we can stay empowered. We say that's our 4 M's: to be minimalist, multitasking, measurably effective, and made for mindful consumption. If we can educate our clients and lock arms with our partners, it means that there's something there that creates instant community and continuity, which is what you really want as a business. So I think for this one, I don't know, baby number 10 feels really good. It feels very full circle for me, but also it allowed me to say, if I was going to do it any other way, I wouldn't do it my way. And so while it's scary to think that we could struggle as a company, 4 months into owning, we became 4 times more profitable than the last owners. And so as an acquirer, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for those wins and you're looking for the next one. I don't know. It never felt this synergistic in any other business.
No, I love that. That's so amazing.
So talk to us about the products. How many products do you have? I love that they're all multitasking and do 3 things. I think that's super rare. So talk to us about that and the innovation process, as you go forward.
So all of our investment right now is in R&D. In fact, I keep telling existing clients, if a product isn't doing 3+ things, expect it to go away. It does not make me popular, once again, but it does create, I think, the type of client we want. We've had some real knuckle-dragging clients that are really challenged by the idea of change. And for us, we've had to shift everything to be able to make this work, from logistics to marketing. And then obviously with R&D, I think key moment for R&D will be that we tighten up our SKUs, so have less, but do more with them.
Yes.
And as a client myself, I'm testing out many of those products right now, and it's been really cool to see. We don't have time for a 12-step process anymore, right? And so helping a client who's time-strapped and maybe doesn't know exactly what they should be doing with their self-care, I think that is going to help us to have even more than this 80% rebuy rate, but to truly feel good about what we're contributing to a very oversaturated, hyped up, and glossed over industry right now.
That's so amazing. When you think back to, obviously you've been doing this for so long and all the investments that you've made, is there any beliefs or kind of thoughts or imposter syndrome or anything that you were able to let go of? I'm just, curious for the women that are listening to this episode, if they're feeling so anxious about making an investment and betting on themselves, what are some things you had to let go of?
Yeah, so much, because you're seeing my highlight right now, right? My darkest moments were totally different. I would say there's 2 things I think about. One is personal growth. So that was my real investment first. Before I started businesses, was really understanding myself. I always say I was a hot mess express before I met my husband, and I stand by that still. But what was unique about that personal investment is I realized what success really was. There's an amazing quote by Maya Angelou. She says, it's not the most common one, but I love this one. She says success is liking yourself, liking what you do, and liking how you do it. And I feel like that has been my true reason for being for a very long time. Before that, I mean, vulnerability was not my jam. I was incredibly emotionally unavailable, which meant success was all I had. That was the bubble around me. And it was a big part of how I view myself. And now all I think about is how can I contribute more? How can I do better? So much of it becoming a mom in this unique way that I did, going from volunteer to an adoptive mom, also allowed me to see it's about more than just me. It's about so many others that I can uplift with the story and that I can link arms with and partner with, but ultimately that we can make a difference even with our give back, where we give back to invisible charities and things that are kind of commonly overlooked, like foster care.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. We were talking earlier. I was saying how I associate my worth with my work ethic. It's like they're just like tied very hand in hand. And so I love that you just highlighted that a little bit. I still want to keep my worth with my work ethic.
Yes.
I'm not giving that up.
I'm not ready to let that one go just yet. I love it.
I always say, why can't both be true, right?
Yeah.
Why can't I love my work and also love my personal life? And for
100%.
so long, that was really hard to see. But then you see someone else's story and they become aspirational for you. And sometimes it's just about seeing that it's possible.
Talk to us about going from advisor to CEO. Obviously, that's like a big leap and not something that often happens. But what were some of like the learnings you had early on, like from taking over the business?
I think the hardest one, particularly for Ghost Democracy, was sticking to the roots that I knew the business had, the transparency, the mindfulness, but also not doing what everybody else thought would be successful. Like everybody would feel so great. And if I was like, and we're in 500 Sephoras.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're saying that because I think like I know a lot of beauty founders that have gotten into Sephora and it has hurt their business.
Say that.
So it literally, I mean, again, Sephora can be the dream and like it can absolutely be successful. But what people don't understand is once you get into Sephora, you have to spend a crazy amount of money towards marketing to perform in Sephora, to therefore stay in Sephora or grow the stores that you're in.
That's where the real work starts.
That's when the real work starts. And it's expensive. So if you get in and then you don't have the cash to back it or the marketing support to back it, you can find yourself in a really scary position. So I think it's really, I'm glad you're saying that because I think for so many brands, that's, the Oscar is getting in. But I think if you're not ready for it, it can be really disastrous for your business. And I think that's something that's important to talk about. Like when I was talking to some founders, like, we were meeting with Sephora and I was like, how do you feel about velocity? Like, and they're like, what's velocity? I'm
exactly.
like, how quickly your stuff moves off the shelf. I'm like, unless you and your parents and your family are out and they're like pouring, you have to, like, that's what they're looking for. So like, if you're not prepared for that, and I think a lot of small brands make that mistake like early on. And that's Sephora, that's Ulta, that's all every retail shop that's not like a mom and pop or like a smaller business, which you could do really well in those smaller businesses as well. So yes, is it unpopular for you to not want to be in Sephora from like an investor perspective? Sure. Is it probably the right move for your business to have that slow and specific growth to get to the place that you want to be at? I think that's like a brave and frankly really smart strategy.
Thank you. My investors like it too. My kids and my
husband.
Yeah. They're thrilled with that value proposition.
Yeah, exactly.
It is one of those things where you keep thinking every other week, I keep thinking, am I right? Should I test the theory? Am I right? Should I think about it differently? And ultimately, transparently, the money is there. So for us, we just keep going back to what makes a great business these days. It's profit. It's not top line revenue. It's not just pleasing what people think you should be.
And headlines.
Yes, it's true business sustainability. That's how I've made all of my money actually, is consulting businesses that are really sustainable. So instead of going to 10 locations, they make 3 really profitable ones. And so that to me is what keeps me focused on the end goal.
I love that so much. And it's also the unsexy path to take because and it's funny because I can relate to it because Create and Cultivate was bootstrapped forever. And I just kept seeing these headlines in Forbes and Fastco and Wall Street Journal of like, $50 million valuation raised, like whatever. And I'm like, I know they're losing so much money. And I'm over here with like a 4 million EBITDA. And I'm like, what about my story? They're like, let us know when you raise money. And I'm like, that's the story? How about bootstrapping a business to $14 million in revenue or whatever? And no one cared until like finally it sold.
Sure.
And then people cared. But it was funny because it's like, I found it so frustrating. But I also was like, I think this is what a good business looks like, but I'm getting told by everyone else, raise at all costs, success at all costs, who cares about profitability, revenue. And then all of a sudden the reckoning happened where you're starting to see a lot of these companies who were sold this vision by investors that revenue is everything struggling. So I think the fundamentals of business, as you said, make more money than you spend.
Yeah. And the fundamentals will always be the fundamentals. I think when I speak so many times, I feel like I'm just saying the same very like tried and true business principles over and over again. And for 22 years, it's made me wildly successful, but it's also very unassuming. So my husband always says, like, sometimes, girl, maybe you should dress the part and let people know that you're a boss. And I'm like, no, I want to wear yoga pants today. Yeah. I want to walk the kids to school and have my hair be messy and then take a call. But it does allow me a freedom that I think most people don't have, which is real money in the bank. And that's my stress point. It's like typically, you know, transparently when I look to buy another business, I'm like, oh shit, we got to pay all these taxes. I'm like, I might as well just bet on me again.
Yeah.
So that allows me to be very, I think, externally and internally successful, but that's not where my worth is. And I think, Marina, I so much, and for so long felt like if I'm not the best at everything, am I lovable? Am I enough? And now I've found and hit my stride at the one thing I do really well. Yeah. I see weaknesses and I turn them into strengths. And if I do that personally with my kids and professionally with my businesses, there is a limitless amount of possibility. And we are seeing that now. You know, this is like a 5-year horizon from the 2020 timeframe. And I never thought I'd acquire again. And it looks like I'm going to acquire quite a few more times. Too much opportunity, too little time.
Wow. So what's the big vision for you? What can people expect next?
I think so much of what I do has always been tied up in my career, and I am feeling this tug and heartstring at nurturing my children. And so they've been involved in the business. So as my investors, they do everything from checking logistic sheets and making sure that things are coming through correctly. My son is a little brainiac at 9, and my daughter at 10 wants to do the marketing. She is really, really creative. And I keep thinking any acquisition now, because of that new view of success, it's got to work for the entire family. And that I couldn't have told you 10 years ago would have been possible for me to have a loving husband, kids who are just phenomenally precocious and working through their stuff. And I think what you'll see more from me is elevating other voices through acquisition and all through partnerships. So that is my dream life.
I love that. My parents are business owners, and I grew up in the office stuffing envelopes, like doing all the things. My sister and I just like the whole time. And I feel like it's like my work ethic was instilled so young, and I loved it. It wasn't even like I like didn't want to be there. I was like, I felt like I'd have my fake little office, you know, like my whole little setup.
I'm just thinking about like what I can have Sebastian do.
Yes.
I'm like,
you're
9, has not done a single thing. I'm like, we're changing that when we get home. Oh my God, KK, it was so good having you. We're so excited. We have a special treat for our listeners. If you use code CREATE10 for an extra 10% off your first order at Ghost Democracy, that's 10% off above any other offer they may have on the site. CREATE10 for an extra 10% off your first order, Ghost Democracy.
Thank you for having me.
Yay!
This has been such a treat.
So
I've loved the show. And I just want to give you guys this because you may not always hear like the authentic accolades of your hard work. But when I see what you guys have done, especially this last couple of years with the transition with you working together, it is more than just like a vibe and great business branding. You guys are doing something that is just so beautiful for other founders and other women. So I always share, you know, if you're curious about being in business, you want to up level, you should check out Create and Cultivate because I really do believe that you're doing something that so many women need. And I'm really honored to be a part of. I want to keep coming and doing whatever you need. I'll keep raising my hand if you keep letting me.
Yeah, no, truly, you're a
your
beast.
Story, crazy.
So thank you so much for coming.
Such a good perspective.
That was such an amazing podcast. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Work Party. If you like what you heard, follow, leave a review, rate the pod, or slide into our DMs.
Check out the different ways you can create and cultivate on our website, createcultivate.com. From retreats and masterminds to our summits and festival.
We have different experiences to support you through your entrepreneurial journey from launch
to legacy.
Follow us at Create Cultivate on all platforms. And don't forget, work hard.
Party on.
Please note that this episode may contain paid endorsements and advertisements for products and services. Individuals on the show may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to in this episode.